Members of council, if I can please have you come to the council chambers. Members of council, can I please have you come to the council chambers? Oh yeah, but nobody read it. One or the other. 19, 20. Members of council, can you please come to the council chambers for quorum? Members of council, can you please come to the council chambers? Members of council, can you please come to the council chambers for quorum? Okay, members of council, we barely have quorum. Please take your seats. This meeting is now resumed. Members of council, we will now review and confirm the order paper. To this point, council has completed 153 items. There are 55 items left on the agenda. I will now take the release of holds. Please put your name under request to question staff. Our first item of business this morning will be planning items PG 15.1, 16.1, 16.2. These items will be considered together. Those items will be followed by the rate-supported budget items, EX 20.22, and then EX 20.23. The next item of business will be EX 20.14 on the Gardner Expressway. Yesterday, there was also discussion about dealing with the remaining 3 items this morning. I propose that these items be dealt with after item EX 20.14, unless we want to do that as a quick release and have a recorded vote. So, do we have quick releases? Councillor Grimes.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. On page 8, CC 23.4, there is a supplementary report that was circulated yesterday. I'd like to move that.
I'm sorry, what number
page
was
8,
it? Yes.
CC 23.4.
Yes.
I'd like to move that. The supplementary report has been circulated, so I'd like to move the supplementary report.
Okay, on page 8, CC 23.4, Councillor Grimes is moving with a supplementary report. All in favor?
Ask recorded vote too, please.
Recorded vote? Okay.
Councillor Carroll, please. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Layton, please.
Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Fragedakis, please.
Catherine, just tell her to come and stand here so I can talk to her.
The item carries unanimously, 24 in favor.
Councillor Grimes?
Speaks on a quick point of order, or point of personal privilege. Just like to wish everyone Merry Christmas. I brought some cookies in from San Diego Bakery, one of the best bakeries in the city. It's in my ward, but I brought some Christmas cookies in for everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm prepared to release on page 5, PW 17.2, contract award for tender call reconfiguration of 6 points interchange. Even though I hate the way the interchange is being reconfigured with traffic lights and no roundabouts, I'm satisfied with staff's recommendation of PW 17 points. I'm satisfied with staff's recommendation of the award-winning company.
Thank you. So on page 5, PW 17.2, Councillor Campbell is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, Madam Speaker, on page 8, the bottom of the page, MM 23.35, Councillor Bilau placed a motion for me yesterday. Doesn't have a hold on it. While it's a very complex motion, it is entirely drafted by staff to deal with some technical amendments left over from a social housing revitalization. So it could be adopted this morning.
I believe that was one. Was that not the one that, oh, you circulated the new one? Yeah, so do you want to just...
look at it first?
Yeah, because it was a problem with the one that was circulated yesterday, and we asked that the information be reprinted.
Okay. So I'll hold it in my name because it appears not to have a hold at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Well, Councillor Shiner said Councillor Shiner said he hasn't had a chance to read it. That's why we have to hold it. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 6, EY 18.12, my motion is for the to City Council deny the request to application to remove a private tree. 18.12, top of the page of page 6, on the pinks. City Council deny the request for a permit to remove one privately owned tree.
Okay, well, I'd like to ask for a recorded vote on that, being that it's in my ward and I don't agree. So, recorded vote. Well, unless I go and speak on it, I mean, it's not worth it. No. Oh, no.
Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
The motion carries 15 to 13.
Yes, you're removing the next one too, right? Yeah.
EY, same page, page
Yeah.
6, EY 18.13, application to remove a ravine-protected private tree. And again, I'm going to be supporting the staff recommendation, and therefore City Council deny the request for a permit to remove one privately owned ravine-protected tree.
And that's also in my ward, recorded vote.
It's in a ravine. Oh, sorry.
was either that or have a long debate on it, yeah.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Wong Tam, please.
The motion carries 16 to 12.
No, it's damaging a garage. Councillor Al-Jamari.
Are we doing mine now?
Well, you can put your name up there, yeah. Is your name, did you put your name up? Okay, put your name and then we'll deal with yours as well. Councillor Holliday.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. Seeing how we're on trees, on page 6, NY 18.14, application to remove a private tree, 37 Summerside Crescent. I'd like a recorded vote so I can vote against it.
Okay, recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, please. Councillor Shiner.
The item carries 23 to 5.
Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning, members. On page 7, TE 20.8, final report, 20 Edward Street. Members of council would have received also a confidential report that was dropped, I believe, on your desk yesterday. I'm just moving the staff recommendations, including the recommendations in a confidential report.
Okay, thank you. So on page 7, the top of page 7, T 20.8, Councillor Wong Tam is releasing with a confidential report. All in favor? Recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, please. Councillor Layton, please.
Councillor Mamalidi, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 28 in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On page 9, MM 23.40, 33 to 49 Avenue Road and 140 to 148 Yorkville Avenue zoning appeal. It is the matters before the board. The motion was tabled yesterday because we're heading to the board in January. A confidential report from the city solicitor was placed on your desk this morning. I'm moving both contents.
So Councillor Wong Tam, you're moving on page 9, members motion 2340. Correct? Correct. All in favor? Recorded vote.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Shiner.
Councillor Fragedakis, please.
The item carries 27 to 1.
Pardon? Yes? Also, Councillor Holliday said it's an error, so he would like to reopen. On favor? Carried. So, let's do it again. Recorded vote. Did you take your picture, Councillor Perks?
I didn't have time. I should have, though.
The item carries 29 to 1.
Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning. I've got three. The first one is on page 3, EX 20.25, the operating variance report for the 9-month period ended in September 30th, 2016. Much to the chagrin of the CFO, I'm afraid I'm going to have to release it without debate.
Okay. On page 3, EX 20.25, Councillor Perks is releasing. On favor? Wow. Why? Pardon?
Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
Councillor Crawford. Sorry. I thought that was who we were missing.
Councillor Karagianis, please. Councillor Karagianis, please.
The item carries unanimously 30 in favor.
Councillor Perks.
Thank you. The next one is EX 20.26, the capital variance. It's here without recommendations, so if I'm going to allow the budget chief to move those recommendations.
Councillor Crawford.
I want to move the staff recommendations from executive and budget.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on page 3, EX 20.26, all in favor of moving the staff recommendation? Did I hear recorded vote? Okay. Councillor Perks, you have another one, right? Yes, I do. Yeah.
Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
Councillor Campbell, please.
The motion carries 28 to 1.
Councillor Perks.
Thank you. On page 5, PE 15.2, Resilient City, and I want Councillor Kelly to note these next few words, preparing for a changing climate, status update, and next steps. I'd be happy to release that as well.
Thank you. So on page 5, P 15.2, Councillor Perks is releasing recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, please. Councillor Wong Tam. Councillor DiGiorgio.
Councillor Campbell, please. Councillor Mammoliti, please. Councillor Crawford, please.
The item carries unanimously, 30 in favor.
Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm prepared to release MM 23.37, 950 King Street West, the Palace Arms.
Councillor Layton is moving page 9, MM 23.37. Recorded. It wasn't a held item, it was just introduced yesterday.
Councillor Thompson, please. Councillor Shiner. And Councillor Perks, please.
Councillor Fragadakis, please. Councillor Crawford, please.
The item carries unanimously, 30 in favor.
Councillor Shiner.
Page 9 of the pink sheets, MM 23.39. I would like to move that notice of motion for vote now.
Okay. On page 9, members' motion 2339, Councillor Shiner is moving. Recorded.
Councillor Perks, please.
Councillor Mihevik, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 29 in favor.
Councillor Aljamari.
Page,
Page 6.
Thank you. Page 6, NY 18.12, application to remove a tree, 166 Richard Clark Drive. I have a motion that City Council approve the request to remove one city-owned tree at 166 Richard Clark Drive. I do this, Speaker, because it was, and I don't do this easily, it was severely damaged during the ice storm. It is the only tree on the street and in the community, in that neighborhood, that is planted in that portion of the right-of-way. the applicant would like to replant trees, but at the other portion, on the other side of the sidewalk.
Okay.
So please let this happen. Thank you.
Well, if it's going to be, if members of council are going to debate it, we'll have to hold the item down, Councillor De Bearmaker. Councillor De Bearmaker?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm just moving that the city deny the request. This is actually a city-owned tree that a private person is wanting to cut down. Staff don't support it being cut down. It's a healthy tree. So we're just, as a quick vote, I'm supporting the staff recommendation to protect the city tree.
Okay, thank you. So we got Councillor Aljamari's motion. Recorded vote. This is on Councillor Aljamari's motion. We're just voting on it. We're not holding it. Councillor, we...
I've got 1,000.
We've already voted, Councillor Frank.
Mayor Tory, please, your vote.
Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor Cole, your vote, please. Councillor Cole.
The motion carries 16 to 15.
Okay, Councillor Aljamari got hers through. Councillor Nunziata did not. Let's reopen Councillor Nunziata's. All in favor? We have to be fair. Councillor Fragadakis, well, the next time it will be debated.
Well, I hope next time that when I ask for something to be held, I can actually hold it.
Well, we were in the middle of a vote.
No, actually we hadn't, but I'm not going to debate that.
You asked before.
On page 9, MM 23.36, including social clubs in the comprehensive review and modernization of Chapter 545 licensing, I'd like to move the notice of motion.
Okay, on page 9, MM 23.
And I'd like a recorded vote.
Okay. MM 2336, Councillor Fragadakis is moving, recorded vote.
Councillor Mamalidi, please.
Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
Councillor Crawford, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 33 in favor.
Councillor Fragedakis, do you want to move the other one too?
I sure do. So it's MM 23.38273 Donlands Avenue. Request for the city solicitor to attend at the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay, thank you. Did you want a recorded vote on that one? Okay. And page 9, MM 2338, Councillor Fragedakis is releasing. On favor? Oh, recorded vote, sorry. Do we have any more?
Members, we had to cancel a vote, so your buttons may still be lit up. So please make sure you've pressed either the
Please
yes or
try
no
to
button.
release as many as you can.
Councillor Wong Tam, please.
Councillor Ainsley, please. Councillor Mihevc, please. Councillor Fragedakis, please.
Councillor Perks, please. Oh. Councillor Ajamari, we need your vote, please.
Sorry.
But you have to be at your seat, that's why.
The item carries unanimously, 32 in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, MM 23.35, which staff were good enough to send through the report with the deleted items, and the local councillor has made me aware of the issues on the site. I am more than happy to let her move her motion. Councillor Carroll?
Okay.
I said I'm more than happy to have you move 23.35. and
Okay.
Thank you for reviewing it with me.
So on page 8, members' motion 2335 is being moved. Okay. Recorded.
Councillor Karagianis, please, your vote.
Councillor Mammoliti, please.
The item carries unanimously, 33 in favor.
Okay, do we have, members of council have any other items they want to release at this time? Because we really have a huge agenda, and we would like to have it completed today. I don't think we want to come back tomorrow, so if you can release an item, please. Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 7, TE 20.69, endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Oh, I probably actually have a motion that includes an updated list.
Councillor Layton, I'm
No,
sorry?
it's good to go as it is. There you go, I'm getting thumbs up all around. Yes, I'll move that item.
Which item was it?
Page 7, TE 20.69, endorsement of liquor license events. Seven. My apologies, I'm eating one of Councillor Grimes' delicious cookies.
Okay, so on page 7, T 20.69, Councillor Layton is releasing. Recorded vote.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Bailao, please.
Councillor Holliday and Councillor Mihevc, please.
The item carries unanimously, 33 in favor.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Page number 4, ED 16.2, Advancing Work-Based Learning in Toronto, report of the Youth Employment Action Plan Advisory Committee. I'd like to release that, and again, just reiterate my thanks to Mr. York and former Councillor Leon, Councillor Leon, for their great work on this, and to thank Ms. Walcott and her great team and all the members of the advisory committee who has worked on this particular item. Thank you. I'd like to have a recorded vote as well, please.
Thank you. So on page 4, ED 16.2, Councillor Thompson is releasing recorded vote.
Councillor Thompson, please, and Councillor Bailão. Councillor Layton, please.
Councillor Cole, please. Councillor Crawford, please. And Councillor Grimes, please. Councillor Crisanti, please.
The item carries unanimously, 36 in favor.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Speaker. I will release the next one, which is CD 16.1, if I may just be permitted about 35 seconds or so just to comment on this particular one.
Is that okay with members?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead. 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. So that is the City of Toronto Basketball Development Plan. I want to thank Mr. Dayton and the team and all the people who have been expending their time to assist us in terms of developing this plan for citywide basketball. Obviously, the city's not going to be running the leagues. There are a number of organizations that are running the leagues, but there's some development work and collaboration that the city will be pursuing with respect to the structure, the overall governance, and the coordination of basketball in our community. We know that basketball has actually taken on a tremendous life in this city with the success of the Raptors and also the 905 team and all the young people that are playing, as well as all the talented men and also women who have excelled, not only the Canadians women basketball team, but also the men's and the Raptors, and people like Jamal McGlure, who has actually developed here as a Toronto-based product and had gone on to the NBA and others and so on. So I simply want to encourage us to endorse this, and I'd encourage councillors to work with their community and our city staff in order to expand and to ensure that basketball is affordable for young people in this city. It's a great opportunity for the city to advance this, Speaker, and I'm hoping that we could endorse this unanimously as members of council. Thank you.
Thank you. So on page 4, CD 16.1, Councillor Thompson is releasing recorded vote.
Councillor Mammoliti, please, and Councillor Holland, please.
Councillor Shiner, please, and Councillor Wong Tam.
The item carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Councillor Carroll, quick release?
Well, Madam Speaker, it's not an item that I'm holding, but I rise because my colleagues would like me to take my virus and go home. And the only item that I'm still here for is MM 23.3 on page 8 regarding the massacre of Nanjing, otherwise known as the rape of Nanking. And Councillor Min Wong, an hour into the session, is not here, so I'm wondering if we could release that and take the vote.
Speaker.
Well,
as it is the final
he had
day of
motions.
council.
He had motions to that.
Yeah, the deputy mayor held it down, so we can't just release it. Councillor Holliday.
Yes, I have one more, Speaker. EX 20.23, the 2017 rate supported budget.
I'm sorry, what page?
Good question.
Page 3, okay.
Yep, thank you. That's the garbage rates. Okay, so I'll continue to hold it, no problem.
Why don't you let go of them?
Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Speaker. TE 20.15. I'm not sure whether the.
I'm sorry. What page, please?
I'm sorry. 7. I'm not sure if the clerks have my extra request from Great Gulf and the. Do you have the traffic?
Do we have it?
I don't know. Yes, you do.
Okay, so this is
So
on-
I would release, it's a confidential attachment. I would release that with the addition of the request for the traffic signalization. And with that, I think we have finally figured out 48 Power Street. Thank you.
Thank
to
you.
all the staff. It's been remarkable.
Thank you. So on page 7T 20.15, the amendments on the screen. This is the first one. On favor? Recorded. Oh, Councillor Holliday wants to hold it. Okay. Well, we weren't in the middle of the vote, Councillor Fragadakis. We didn't push our buttons. We didn't know. Councillor Holliday has held it down before we started voting because it was a request for a recorded vote. The lights were not on, so we didn't start the vote. Councillor Holliday is holding the item down. Yes, yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Councillor Fletcher, you indicated that you had some quick releases? No? All right. All those in favor of adopting the order paper? Carried. Point of order, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have a long agenda today. We have a lot of items, important items on the agenda. I just wanted to remind Council that we also have budget presentations tomorrow morning. We have a lot of staff coming in Cluster A, and I would encourage the Council to really push through the agenda today. If we have to come back tomorrow, it's really going to be a huge inconvenience to a lot of staff and councillors. So I would urge you to get this agenda done today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, members of council, we just went through quick releases, and just to let you know, just by going through quick releases, we released 20 items. So, if we continue, we might finish the agenda today, so hopefully, if you have any to release, please release them, unless there's something wrong with it. All right. So our first item is PG 15.1, which is on page 3. And PG 16.2 on page 5. 16.1 on page 5 and 16.2 on page 5. So we're dealing with all three items together. All right. Do we have questions to staff? Is there a presentation? I understand there's a presentation.
On there? Okay. Go ahead. Good morning. This presentation pulls together the contents of 3 reports, the Divisional Performance Report for City Planning, the Development Fee Review, which is before you today, a increase in the Development Review fee, as well as how does the city grow. There's a lot of content, so I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. There's 2 key drivers behind what's happening right now in the City Planning Department. The first is around context. Of course, there's a strong real estate market that's resulted in increased higher levels of development activity. Our applications are also becoming more complex, where in the past, one application might be one 60-story building in the downtown. Typically, one application is multiple buildings. It includes heritage. It includes a parkland dedication component. So there's a complexity in each of the applications. And then lastly, high real estate prices and transaction costs are resulting in more people growing in place, which means that we have an incredible volume with respect to the Committee of Adjustment. We also have complexity with respect to the fact that we have very few greenfield application in the city. Most projects are infill, which means there are heritage, there's adjacent neighbors. There's usually in the downtown core a rental replacement component to each project. We also see that OMB hearings have an increasing impact on staff resources, particularly as it pertains to defending policy. So less related to development applications and more policy, like the Municipal Comprehensive Review. And also, infrastructure has not kept up with growth. And as a result, the infrastructure complexities and issues, making sure that we have big enough sewers and pipes to address new projects is adding complexity to the review process. And then lastly, of course, as all of you are aware, we have very engaged stakeholders that are requiring multiple public meetings. Frequently, councillors request additional public meetings. And we also have multi-party negotiations. Developers, residents associations, special interest groups, and the councillors are frequently involved in the negotiations around our various applications. We also have, as you will see on this next slide, 16 divisions that are circulated in development review. We have instituted over the course of the past year active leadership in development review to enhance efficiencies in project management across divisions, but this is part of the complexity that we see in a city where there's a whole variety of interests and council policies that must be accounted for in the development review process. This next slide shows the actual process. It's important to note that we have legislative requirements as we go through development review. So we can't pick and choose to do certain components and not others. This is the baseline process. We frequently negotiate outcomes. Often settlements are negotiated with a whole variety of parties, but we also go well beyond the legislative requirements as a result of the objective of getting to a negotiated settlement. It's important to note that only 4% of our development applications actually go to the Ontario Municipal Board. That's because we do focus on a negotiated settlement outcome. I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit now about growth in the GTA, which also points to a series of key performance indicators for the City Planning Division. It's important to note, and this is a bit of a shocking stat, that over the course of the past 30 years, we've in fact had a 100% increase in Toronto's share of the overall GTA housing completions. So a big shift into re-urbanization, particularly in the core. Of course, staffing levels haven't increased during this time frame, so we focused on efficiencies to deliver on this increased volume. We have a whole series of key performance indicators that I'll walk through that are comparisons in relation to the GTA overall. This is actually a really important slide. When I brought this forward at PGM, I actually had earlier data. I now have updated data. This is from a 2016 report. And interestingly, despite the volume that we have, We, in fact, outperform most of the region with respect to our development approval timelines. This is important information. The average is 18.2 months, but in fact, Toronto's average is 17.7 months. And this is based on typical developments in each of the various cities that were surveyed and complex applications. So this is a really important performance indicator to demonstrate how we are doing at advancing approvals in the City of Toronto in relation to the rest of the region. But another important indicator is, in fact, the cost effectiveness of the planning process. This, too, is a key performance indicator for the City Planning Division. Now, this is actually a national comparison, and the number that you see, the first bar graph, is city planning, and we, in fact, included in that number is the entire city planning budget. So not just development review, but also all of the work we do with respect to transportation planning, with respect to policy planning, with respect to research that's used by other divisions in the city. Very clearly, the City Planning Department, on a national scale, when you compare the service that we provide in relation to the cost of that service, we provide excellent value to the residents in the City of Toronto. Now, the next slide demonstrates the volume that we are dealing with. And this, too, is a bit of an astounding number. We, in fact, have seen a record-breaking 30,749 units completed in Toronto in 2015. And just to put that in perspective, that's more than double the average number of units completed annually over the past 10 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's to come, but this demonstrates that we are in the midst of a really significant boom. Importantly, units are being occupied once they're built. We do not have a glut in any way on the market. There has been an overall steady upward trend, both in the starts in the city and also in the completions over the past 3 decades. And importantly, every one of these applications must go through the City Planning Department, must come through City Council. This, too, is a very important indicator with respect to the performance of the City Planning Division. So we have unprecedented growth that is a reflection of our strong planning framework and also our divisional performance. So how is it that we're doing this? How is this happening? And I'd like to just tell you about some of the continuous improvements that we are always implementing in the context of the City Planning Division. And this is really a management approach, the approach of continuous improvements. The first is that we created in 2013 a strategic plan, and that strategic plan identified a whole series of ways that we could create continuous learning and innovation within the City Planning Department. And I'd just like to highlight a few of our strategic directions and actions. The first one's a really important one, setting priorities and improving processes. So the assumption behind the strategic plan is that we are going to continue to have to figure out how to do more with less. That's the key objective. So setting priorities and improving processes, as an example, we now report out to PGM twice a year with our overall divisional work program, and we identify how we prioritize the projects that come forward requested by City Council. You'll also notice in the box next to it is managing the motions from City Council, because of course this is a significant challenge for us. We needed a process in place to manage the fact that our work program literally is changing on a monthly basis as a result of new priorities that are identified by City Council. We also have focused on strengthening and enhancing the capacity of the division to deliver. So this has resulted, for example, in a program called Active Leadership and Development Review, which is about the planning department leading those 16 divisions that are engaged in the development review process. If you look at the next slide, you'll see how we're doing. This is a 5-year strategic plan. We've implemented 31 of our actions. There's 44 in total. While this looks very optimistic, I just want to say cautiously that we've actually implemented more of the easier actions. Many of the actions that are left in the plan are actually quite difficult to implement in the absence of having additional resources. I'll give you one specific example. One of the actions we identified is the creation of an OMB SWAT team. so that we're not retraining staff on an ongoing basis every time a new OMB hearing comes forward, to create a consolidated resource in collaboration with City Legal to address OMB hearings. This is a really important action, but we've not yet had the capacity to implement it. So I'd like to shift gears now and just focus on the development fee review process and the recommendation that is before you today. We're always offering service improvements. The fee review is to bring the fee in line with the service and conformity with the city's user fee policy. So this is actually about ensuring that the fee that is charged to developers is in conformity with city policy that already exists. So if you look at this next slide, you'll notice that in 2011, City Council adopted a full cost recovery approach for development application fees. So that was in 2011. Now we've made all kinds of changes. We've added a whole series of services. So in 2015, we hired an outside consultant, Watson and Associates, to review what the fee should be. So the recommendation that you have before doesn't actually increase the resources of any of those 16 divisions or city planning. All it does is move the bar so that less of development review is coming from the tax base and more of development review, in fact almost all of it, is coming through the user fee, the development application fee. And this is about bringing the service we provide in conformity with an already existing 2011 policy. So 2015, we actually signaled in the budget process that we would be undertaking this review. We hired Watson and Associates, and it's important to know that Watson and Associates undertakes this kind of a review for municipalities across the GTA, so they have a standardized model. And they, in fact, conform to the Planning Act regulations around application fees, which are very specific and quite rigid. And importantly, the fee must be defensible at the OMB. So that's why there's a tremendous amount of due diligence associated with it. We just can't randomly increase the fee. We have to have a strong rationale for how it's being done. So if you look at the next slide, you'll notice that the average cost is $50 million on an annual basis for development review. $36 million is the average revenue that we generate from current fees. The recommendation in the report before you today recommends that we increase the fee by 34%, which results in a $12 million of additional fee that is now coming from that user fee, from that application fee. There's $2 million that is, in fact, that we're not recommending be recovered in the fee, and those are monies that are related to the processing of Section 37 monies. And that is, in fact, the opinion of legal as well, that they should not be recovered through the fee. So if you just look on the next slide, you'll see there's all those 16 divisions that I showed you earlier. It's a little bit small, but you can see at the top, the peak of the little houses, the percentage, so this is the amount of time that each one of the various divisions spends in development review. So of one application, so 100% of the time, 54% of the resources are coming from city planning, 14% from engineering, 8% from transportation services. You get the idea, it's on the slide. This was a very important part of the fee review assessment undertaken by Watson and Associates, and they worked very closely with all of the divisions to, in fact, calculate this fee, and it shows the percentage of the level of effort. So you see here on this next slide, the current state, $36 million comes from the fee, $14 million comes from the tax base. In the recommendation before you, $48 million will in fact be coming from the fee. It's important to note that this does not increase the budget of any of the divisions, including city planning. It just shifts where the money is coming from. Our budget stays the same, but the money is now coming from a fee instead of the tax base. And the next slide shows you how that breaks down, how that $12 million breaks down by division. So you'll see, for example, engineering services, it's a $3.5 million allocation. So one of the things we discovered is that we were under recognizing the level of effort by engineering services in each development application. You can also see that there's a significant increase in the level of effort related to legal. This is a direct outcome of the claim I made at the beginning of the presentation about the fact that development applications are becoming much more complex. As a result, lawyers are involved for much more of the application process. So this shows you a bit of a breakdown as to where those monies will be allocated. Why the increase in costs? The increase, it's important to note that the increase is related to those various variables that I identified at the outset, including the increase in complexity, including the fact that we are now requested to do many more public meetings than we used to do in the past, so there's more meetings per application. And there's also a series of indirect costs, like the legal costs, that have been added in. So lastly, so that's the component for the fee increase review report. The last report that I'd like to talk to you about is how does the city grow? Now, this is a very rich report with a tremendous amount of data, and I'm going to go through it very quickly. I'm just going to catch the very high points, but I encourage you to read the report which you have before you. The first is this, that we in fact have seen over the course of the past 4 years a significant number of residential completions in the City of Toronto. 85,166 completions over the past 4 years. So this is just looking in the past, it's not looking forward yet. I'll talk about what's to come in a moment. But importantly, you can see the little green line that shows how this share has changed. And this is the point that I made at the outset. There's been a 100% increase in the amount of GTA growth which is now being accommodated in the City of Toronto as opposed to in the region as a whole. In 2005, the share of the GTA growth in the City of Toronto increased to 65%. It's very important to note this is because of the desirability of our downtown. Downtown is attracting the growth. It's growing 4 times faster than the rest of the city. The desirability of living in the downtown is driving the growth that we see overall in the City of Toronto. If you take the downtown out of the equation, you actually see our levels as being significantly lower than the rest of the GTA. So the desirability of the downtown continues to fuel both jobs and new residential growth in the City of Toronto. Now let's look at the development pipeline on the next slide. Toronto has continued to experience a surge of both residential and non-residential growth. Again, this is particularly happening in the context of the downtown. Now, the current development pipeline contains all projects with development activity over the past 4 years, and it includes any project at any stage of the approvals and development process. So this includes, I was just showing you a slide on what's been built. This is a slide that shows you what's under review, what's actively being built, in addition to what's been built over the last 5 years. So this slide shows us what is to come, as well as what's been built over the last 5 years. What's not included in this 2,362 projects is, in fact, the projects that have been received in 2016. 2016 has again been a banner year with 184 development review projects received in the City Planning Department. So we are again expecting in 2017 a really significant and aggressive growth, unlike what we've seen in the city in the past. Going to the next slide, importantly, and this is a performance metric for the City Planning Division, we are extremely proud to say that we are, despite the fact that there's so much development activity, that we are approving, City Council is approving, on an annual basis, 20% more units than the industry can build. So we are out ahead of the industry. The planning process is not holding up in any way development in this city. There's other constraints like access to trades and access to financing, but it's not development approvals. That tends to be a common narrative. It's simply untrue. There are a whole variety of factors that impact whether a project gets built or not. The city planning process, with a better than average performance in the rest of the region, with higher growth that has doubled over 30 years in the rest of the region, is not actually that. And this is really the money slide, the next slide, which actually shows how we're doing in relation to the provincial growth forecasts. So by 2041, we are mandated to accommodate an additional 400,000 residents in the City of Toronto. Importantly, we are far exceeding our targets for growth. So again, we frequently hear the mantra about the planning process taking too long. If anything, we're actually going too fast. We, in fact, at Yonge and Eglinton, we have exceeded our density target of 400 people and jobs per hectare. Our big challenge at Yonge and Eglinton is ensuring we have the infrastructure, particularly parks, open spaces, and schools, as well as transit, to accommodate all of this growth. North York Civic Centre is another area where we have exceeded our provincial growth targets for 2041. We are way out ahead of where we need to be with respect to development in the city. This is really critical because it shines the light intensively on the importance of infrastructure to ensure that we have the infrastructure in place to accommodate the tremendous growth that we see. And again, we see no letting up of this growth in 2017 or 2018. The next slide shows you where the proposed residential units are going in the city. Importantly, this is an important indicator in city planning, a performance indicator related to whether our policies are working. And they are working exceedingly well. 83% of the growth is in the growth areas exactly where we target it. The dark blue at the bottom, 38% of the growth is in our downtown and central waterfront. The green, 9% is in our centers. Now, 2 of those centers, North York and Midtown, are exceeding their targets, and 2 other centers, Scarborough and Etobicoke, we're still building out the infrastructure to accommodate growth, like the road network. You heard earlier about the 6 Points interchange. That's all about creating the development parcels for future growth in the future Etobicoke Civic Centre. 12% is in our other mixed-use area, and then 17% is in our other areas. That 17% is really Committee of Adjustment applications. That's the change we're seeing in neighborhoods, which is actually really significant. So this actually gives you a sense of where the development activity is happening in our growth areas and is an important indicator that our policies are working. So the next slide puts that information into a visual. There's a whole variety of ways that we break down these analytics. I had about 10 slides and I pulled them all out of the presentation just to make it shorter, but all of those slides are available in the report and online. And this actually shows you the built projects in the dark red, the active projects that are being built in the orange color, as well as the projects that are under review in the yellow color. So this gives you a sense overall of where the activity is taking place. We also have a series of slides where we show this in relation to our proposed transit projects. I also pulled those out to make the presentation shorter, but that's a really important indicator for us, is overlaying the growth with the transit infrastructure. The next slide shows the proposed non-residential development, and there's very, very important good news on this slide, and it's this. 23% of the employment growth in our city is happening in our employment lands. And this reinforces how important it is for us to protect those employment lands. As we determined into our municipal comprehensive review, we are in fact going to run out of employment lands in the next 20-year horizon. So protecting them in the short term needs to continue to be a critical strategic priority of City Council. And then the second last slide I have here is showing the downtown and central waterfront development activity. Just over 119 units and just over 3.7 million meters of non-residential GFA have been proposed in this area. We are in fact accommodating in the next 20 years half the population of all of the province of Saskatchewan in 17 square kilometers of our downtown. The biggest deficit we have in our downtown context is, of course, park space. And this is the reason why Rail Deck Park is such critical infrastructure if we're not going to kill the golden goose in the downtown. Again, if you take these areas out of the city, you actually see development activity that is lower than the rest of the GTA overall. So the downtown is a really critical part of our success story as a city, and it is driving the increases in assessment value. in the City of Toronto. And lastly, this is a slide that I added as a result of a question at PGM, the average number of proposed residential units per project. This demonstrates that we are continuing to see complexity, and also projects are getting bigger and bigger. This is a response to market demand. It's also a response to an increase in land values, which makes it viable for the development industry to actually build bigger projects on certain sites. But it goes against the fact that in many of these areas, we're already exceeding our targets, and we in fact do not need to be over-approving development anywhere in the city. There's a significant amount of developable land that continues to be available. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councillor Carroll?
Oh, my first. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the context of that presentation, we do not need to be over-approving. I'm wondering if the Chief Planner wanted to comment on the correspondence from QP 79 on planners' workloads, because I understand from the presentation that while we're going to shift where we're getting the revenue from to pay for planning, we're not increasing the budget. The survey says that we've got a lot of overwork going on, and I don't care one way or the other whether they're in the union or out of the union. There's an overwork there that means that sometimes the answer is no to having a residents working group on large applications. Can we see any addressing of this workload that's complained about in the correspondence attached to the report, or is there a strategy around when a residents working group is needed?
Through the chair, in the context of the PGM meeting, we were directed through a motion that was unanimously approved to go back and evaluate an increase in staff that would be required in order to address these workload pressures. And we're bringing forward a recommendation in January. The intention was to bring that forward as part of the budget process.
So it would come forward as part of the 2017 budget process? Or future years?
Through the Speaker, that might be a question for the Chair, for Councillor Shiner, but we were asked to bring this forward in the context, or maybe for Rob Orsini, we were asked to bring this forward in January so that it would align with the budget process coming forward.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I wonder if you want to bring the CFO to the floor, because he looks ready to answer.
Through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I missed the first part of the question, but I think the question is, are these DARP fees included in the budget submission?
No. I'm speaking to the communication attached to the report. There's a communication attached to the How Shall We Grow from QP 79 that represents community planners. And it speaks to there's significant workload issues. There's a significant amount of overtime being worked without pay. And as I've said, I don't care whether they're in or out of a union. The workload issue speaks to the problem that councillors often have when they have a complex site and the community wants to have a working group meet over a few meeting nights. It's simply not possible because they've already reached their quota of overtime, and so workload becomes a direct impact on residents. So if the report on that is to come in 2017, the question is, can it be addressed through an adjustment to the budget in this budget year, 2017?
So I understand that that report is coming in 2017. I'm looking over to Stephen. Will that be in time for the 2017 budget, though?
Mike.
Microphone.
No, but I don't control his mic.
Too bad.
Madam Speaker, I had one other question. My time's a-wasting here.
Voting yes. Yes, sorry, through the Speaker. Yes, the report will be coming back and will be considered as part of the 2017 budget process.
Okay, so we could make adjustments if need be. And lastly, I think the Chief Planner got to it in the end, but looking at being beyond the provincial policy places to go in all of our target areas, I'm one of them, growth areas on transit avenues. So are we saying now that if we're beyond what the targets were for 2040, we'll see more of a more stringent approach to refusals right out of the preliminary gate in those areas where we've now exceeded the target?
Through the Speaker, that's correct. In fact, in the past several City Council meetings in Yonge and Eglinton, there have been primarily refusals, in part because we are over our density targets and we have significant concerns about the infrastructure required to accommodate more density. There's already a significant amount that's been approved but is not yet built in that area, so absolutely.
Right, and so, extreme cases of asking for conversions in and around employment lands, trying to push too much residential into an employment area when we've already exceeded the residential targets under the Municipal Comprehensive Review. We'll also see a more firm stance there?
Through the Speaker, we are always very firm and work very closely with economic development on ensuring that we're protecting those lands. But if the point is, do we need to be encroaching on those lands, the answer is absolutely not. We have a significant amount of residential area, particularly along our avenues, that is more than sufficient for accommodating the growth that we need to accommodate in the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Mammoliti.
So I've got two, I guess, major questions. One, have we thought about the concept of asking developers, not necessarily for the fees, but for the full responsibility of having their own planners to make sure that they have fulfilled the City of Toronto's responsibilities? And I see this as an example. I'll give you an example. I see this as a developer who is required to hire their own engineer and stamp their own drawings very professionally, and then the city takes that and they look at it and they say it's stamped by an engineer. Why is it that we won't do that? Is it because we don't want to get rid of staff planners? Because that's effectively what it would mean. But why don't we just get developers to pay their own planners and then just have a group of planners, a smaller group of planners at the city to make sure they've complied to our policies? That would save us money, wouldn't it?
Through the Speaker, to be clear, developers already do that. They already hire planners and will typically have at least one or sometimes two on larger projects. On the Unilever site, there's a whole team of planners that have been hired. Those planners work with our planners, and there's a negotiation. The City of Toronto planners represent the City of Toronto interests. So, for example, when a planning rationale is prepared, you'll get a very different planning rationale from a developer who's trying to maximize the built form than from a city planner who's very concerned about the impacts on the adjacent neighborhood and meeting basic infrastructure requirements. And then a negotiation takes place between those parties. The city planners represent the city interests. The private sector planners represent the interests of that developer specifically, not the city overall.
So, all right, I'll leave that alone. It's the fees there's fees everywhere. They're just like, wherever we're turning now at the City of Toronto, it just seems there's increases in fees and more fees and introduction of new fees. And I just don't understand why we can't just leave it up to the developers in that sense. I got your answer. I'm concerned about the areas that want to grow and aren't able to grow because it seems that, and I think I just verified it through your report, that downtown seems to be the concentration point for everything. And nobody really wants to invest in other parts of the city. And I heard it just from you that you've already met your density targets. And I'm afraid that if you're saying that already, it's because the downtown the core has taken it all up, and you may not seem to be as interested in areas that would like to grow and can't.
Speaker, I'm glad you asked that question. The density targets the areas where we've met our density targets are the North York Centre and the Yonge Eglinton Centre, arguably the downtown as well. we've also, because there's a rolled up number in terms of the overall population growth for the city, we are on target to meet that, that number well in advance of the date.
Your targets don't include the rest of the city, then?
They absolutely do. The targets where we have met that I'm speaking to are specifically those centers. Those are the areas where we've exceeded. To get to your other point about the growth kind of being sucked up in those areas, that's a very big concern of the City Planning Department. It's one of the reasons why we are so aggressively seeking to advance mid-rise development, because mid-rise development is development where we can accommodate intensification in the suburbs.
So 2 quick questions, because my time's almost up, and I hope you can answer them. If that's the case, what is planning doing to try to encourage more reasonable development in corridors that do want them? And I know the speaker her corridors are one. Councillor Al-Jamari will agree that with the new hospital at Keele and Wilson, it becomes a magnet for a community that wants to grow properly and not just one application at a time. Councillor Thompson, I think, is another one.
That was your last.
We almost feel like we can't answer the questions of our community when they come up with respect to proper planning and actually protecting communities from developments as well.
Councillor Memoli, that was your last question.
Well, there's a whole series of studies that we have underway that are precisely about facilitating growth in suburban communities. Tippett Road was advanced this term of council. It's all about growth at Tippett Road, at Wilson, in the suburbs. In Councillor Carroll's ward, Consumers Next is about taking a business park and transforming it into a complete community. Keele Finch Plus is all about the LRT in the suburbs and ensuring that we are accommodating growth in a way that doesn't compromise the employment areas in the suburbs. We have work underway along Kingston Road as a result of the LRT being proposed in Scarborough. The University of Scarborough secondary plan is all about building out a second hub in Scarborough. And the transportation master plan in the Scarborough Centre is all about creating new development parcels by adding a new street grid. A significant capital investment will be required by City Council in order to take out the existing infrastructure and make smaller blocks. So we're a couple steps behind before we will begin to see significant growth in that centre. And 6 Points Interchange is an example where we're doing that work today, changing the street grid in order to prepare the development blocks so that over the course of the next 40 years we can attract the growth and development in those suburban communities.
Thank you. We have a number of people asking questions, so we really want to tighten this up.
Yes. Brief questions,
Okay.
brief answers.
Yes.
Why did the fee for the Committee of Adjustment decline? Sorry, let me be specific. It's a supplementary report, a minor variance, clear title, the fee declined.
Through the Speaker, in the review that was undertaken by Watson and Associates, it was determined that we didn't have enough staff, given the volume of applications, to be spending enough time on each application given the fee. The logical outcome would be to reduce the fee, except the illogical part of that, it means we're reducing the fee and providing a poorer quality service. We want to do the opposite. So the recommendation that was made and approved at PGM is that the fees stay the same and we increase the staffing levels in order to provide the level of service that has been established by City Council.
Okay, so this actually has the fee going down for that.
Through the Speaker, that was amended at PGM, and there's a direction to finance.
And some of these fees go up quite significantly from, for example, 17,000 to 40,000. Why wouldn't we have raised the fees a year prior? So why now? Why not before? Why not 2 years ago? What precipitated this?
Through the Speaker, there's quite a bit of work involved in the fee review, and as it stands today, the fee is reviewed on every 4 years. Okay. So it was last reviewed in 2011. We did this in 2015.
And then on severances, the severance fee for lot splits, it's going up a little bit. It's going up from $3,100 to $5,500, I believe, according to the supplementary report.
do we have any latitude to raise these fees above what's here? So, for example, some councillors might want to discourage lot splits.
Yes.
Through the Speaker, the recommendation that you have before you is based on the level of effort required to process that application. I would suggest that there are other policy ways that you could discourage that, but the fee would not, using the fee to do so would not be defensible at the OMB.
There are other policy ways. Okay. So then the last question, just very briefly. So will these fees more readily balance your expenses to your costs?
Through the Speaker, what these fees do are our expenses stay exactly the same in all of the divisions. Our expenses don't change.
Right, but
the only difference is you're recovering more from a fee instead of the tax base.
Okay, right.
That's the only difference.
And how much more is that?
12 million. Currently, the overall budget is 50 million on an annual basis. 36 million is recovered by fee. 12 million will be additionally recovered by fee.
I remember that. Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Doucette, any questions that haven't been asked?
I hope I've got new questions. How do these new increased fees compare to the neighbouring around us?
Through the Speaker, they in fact keep us right in the middle, which is where we are today. So other municipalities have also been increasing their fee. We do not have the highest fees and we do not have the lowest fees. We're right in the middle. This fee increase, because our adjacent municipalities are also increasing their fees, this keeps us right in the middle.
Okay. When an application comes in, I'm assuming planning calculates what the fee will be. And is that just a one-time fee on that first application which comes in, that first submission? Or, if I'll give you the whole question. If a particular development is quite complicated and they have to give us more submissions and more submissions, do we only charge them that upfront fee even though we don't know how many submissions they're doing, and this could go on for 3, 4, 5 years?
Through the Speaker, good question, and you're correct. We charge them once at the beginning of the process, and so if the process becomes elongated, we actually absorb that. But the fee you have before you actually takes into account, it's a bit of a balancing act. Some people get through the process very quickly, others have a hard time with it and take longer. It's a middle point that you see with the fee, but you're absolutely right.
So some developers get off quite lightly when it's 4 or 5 year process.
Well, the important point is that it's a disincentive for us for the process to take a long time, because we in fact get the same fee if it's a 1-year process or a 4-year process.
Do you see these new fees you're talking about, instead of coming out of a tax base, it's now going to come out of fee base? Will that allow us to hire more planners and maybe get your OMB SWAT team going sooner rather than later?
Through the Speaker, this is an important point. No, because what this does is it simply shifts how Council is in fact paying for the work that is done by the City Planning Division. It's being paid through a user fee, and less of it is coming from the tax base, but it doesn't actually change our overall budget.
That's a shame. Talking about, you were mentioning that we are exceeding our growth numbers, our growth plans. Does that give you more, I use the word tools, as you know, does that give you more tools when we've got a proposal coming in to an apartment neighborhood which is supposed to be stable and they're giving us this massive infill? Does that give you more tools, do you think, to say this is over-densified, this is too much? Can you use that argument with the applications? I think you touched on this with Councillor Carroll, but I wasn't quite sure.
Through the Speaker, we in fact are looking more at actually using the hard infrastructure constraints to evaluate the impact of the development applications. But that being said, there's another report before you from PGM on OMB reform, and one of the recommendations in that report, we recommended to the province. They're now coming back and suggesting to us that they're going to give more weight to local decision making. And so that actually becomes the purview of this City Council to say, look, we've got too much growth in this area and we're going to mitigate the amount of growth that we see.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Speaker, to the Chief Planner. You touched earlier, I think it was Councillor Mammoliti, about Kingston Road, and one of the questions I wanted to ask was the number of development applications along that avenue that have been approved, but are in the pipeline, or planning staff in the, sorry, Councillor Karygiannis? Thank you. I can't see the city planner. Thank you. So there's a number of applications in the pipeline. They're considered active by planning staff, but they've been inactive or stagnant in my constituents' opinion for 6-7 years, even one adjacent to the Gilwood GO train station. And how would you suggest that they get moved along from the stage they're at now?
Through the Speaker, this is an important point to distinguish, because the process actually isn't driven by city planning.
Yep.
So someone can come in and make an application and then decide that, you know, they don't have enough money, or they want to focus on a different project, and that project can sit. And we see that in various places. In some instances, they're waiting for the market to increase. We, in fact, because we have so much volume, we don't actually play an aggressive role like a municipality that might be stagnant in actually trying to get those applications and those applicants engaged. To do so would be a very different approach in the city planning department, and there's some argument that that's something that actually should be done in areas where we want to see growth, but currently we have no process underway to do so.
Okay. All right. And then I wanted to ask, in your report, or the growth, sorry, the one appendix, one of the things that stood out for me on page 13 of the economic growth profile, when it talks, you mentioned earlier about the plans around the Scarborough Civic Centre, around the subway station that we've approved, and working on a street grid pattern. And is that being laid out now? I'm trying to understand how we do that. Work with property owners in the area that want to build between now and when the subway station is going to be constructed. And one of the reasons that stood out is on page 13, you have a chart for the proposed development in the secondary plan areas, and when you look at the GFA non-residential for the Scarborough Centre, it's quite low, like if you compare it to Highland Creek, for example.
Through the Speaker, this is an excellent question. We, in fact, do not want to see a significant amount of growth right now in the Scarborough Centre, because any growth that happens right now would be based on the old road network and the super blocks. And we are doing a master plan to create a finer grid of streets so that there can be an urban character and an urban typology in the Scarborough Centre. So in the short term, we don't actually want to be building out the centre based on that old street grid, because we do want it to become a very urban centre, not unlike the core of the city that we're in today, and that cannot happen with the old street grid and the pedestrian flyovers. We want to make it a true urban place. So in the short term, it's not a bad thing that there's not a lot of growth in the Scarborough Centre, and we don't want that growth. We want to first get the bones of the how the parcels will be divided up in place first. And in fact, we do have some proposals where it is a bit challenging, because our preference is in fact to undertake the master planning, which we are halfway through right now. There was a meeting a couple of weeks ago with all of the stakeholders, a public meeting. We're doing that work aggressively as quickly as possible, and then there will be an important decision by Council around the capital improvements that are required.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just want to touch on, I guess, some of the growth targets set by, what are essence provincial policy. Are they too aggressive?
Through the Speaker, we're far exceeding the growth targets, so I wouldn't say they're too aggressive. If anything, they're not. You could make the argument that they're not aggressive enough because we're exceeding them.
Have we ever rejected or written a refusal report for an application because it was not accessible to transit or didn't have transit access? I mean, every development always claims they're close to transit. Has that ever been a criteria by which we've rejected an application?
Through the Speaker, no, it hasn't. However, going back 20, 30 years, we've always been writing the importance of building new transit. If you look at all the reports on Liberty Village, they're directly connected to improving the transit infrastructure. The challenge is...
But we have, as a city, and the planning has never said, no, this won't work because you don't have the transit there.
Through the Speaker, that's correct.
Okay. Is there an ability or a consideration, either through provincial regulatory changes or city changes, whereby metrics could be included so that development applications could be measured and in turn either approved or rejected based on proximity to higher order transit?
Through the Speaker, I believe that is likely possible and is something that should be undertaken. Currently, the 83% of our growth that's going in our target growth areas, those are our higher order transit areas. It's one of the reasons why transit has become so congested. We've been driving the growth to the main transit corridors already.
And in terms of some of the secondary corridors, and I'll give an example, Dufferin, which runs through quite a few of our wards, I think in the report back to Councillor Bailao and I, you said the next couple of years there are 90,000 units coming to Dufferin, and we know that despite all the transit debates we have in this room, that it's the Dufferin bus or the Dufferin bus, and that will be the same situation transit-wise even probably 30 years from now, yet we will approve those 90,000 units. How do we square that with some of the communities and residents who kind of are suggesting that we'd happily take the additional development if there actually was transit to support it?
Through the Speaker, we are coming forward in 2017 with the next wave of projects for the transit network plan.
But Dufferin will never have anything but a bus.
But I think that it's, through the Speaker, an important consideration. And looking at that relationship between those new units and the transit infrastructure, for example, a BRT on Dufferin could provide a very high level of service.
Okay, but something like that, based on how transit even gets discussed, debated, and approved, would be many, many decades away, yet we will continue to approve that. Or I could use Bayview as an example, or other corridors that don't have the transit, yet I think our provincial policies is basically mandate almost that we continue to approve it despite no transit on the horizon, even if we start to debate it in the next year.
Through the Speaker, that's correct, and it's a problem.
Okay, thank you. I know in the past there's been some concerns that you've had just in terms of keeping up because of staffing and vacancy issues. Where is that at right now, and how many vacancies do you still have unfilled?
Through the Speaker, vacancies haven't been a problem. Over the past 2 years in city planning, we very aggressively fill our vacancies. We do not adhere to the gapping policy precisely because of the volume of applications that we have. So at any given time, we have one of the lowest vacancy rates in the city.
Just curious, I don't know if you know this offhand, but what roughly would be the head count of people in your department dealing with transit planning and transit responsibilities?
Through the Speaker, I'm very sad to say it would be 7 very overworked people.
7? Thank you. And just on a totally different, because I'm just running out of time, I'm kind of one of the believers that the traditional community planning meeting is completely flawed. And it just sets up residents to be disappointed and angry and probably doesn't help what we do or what your staff does. Is there any thought to start to change the way we conduct those meetings? If there's any thought to better train the planners who might be experts in planning but certainly aren't expert facilitators to help navigate that, or even to have professional facilitators, because in my experience, by 10 minutes into those meetings, we've already lost the community, in large part because of the format. Is there any interest or plan to change that in the coming years?
Through the Speaker, absolutely, and I agree with your comments. In most jurisdictions at a planning meeting, you would have a facilitator, you would have an administrator taking notes, and you would have the planner acting as a planning expert. In our community meetings, our planner does all 3 of those jobs, and it does not work very well. So we have been employing a few strategies to address that, including using a decentralized format, which we've been using in the downtown, where we have facilitated tables, and we've been drawing on community volunteers. We also have a new process, the Planning Review Panel, which is intended to respond to this challenge as well, where there are 28 citizen representatives across the city who review policies and provide feedback to city staff. They meet 6 times a year for an entire Saturday, and they're trained, and it's a way of building capacity in a less antagonistic kind of environment. We're continuing to seek ways to address that issue.
Thank you. If we can try to keep our questions short and answers, please, because we have a huge agenda. Councillor DeGiorgio, questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, to the Chief Planner. Thank you for the presentation, first of all. And we had a growth plan, or at least a provincial growth plan, that contemplated our increasing the number of units by 400,000, I think you said, by 2041?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and I guess we set out with the various growth areas and projected to be at certain percentages. And one thing that I noticed from the presentation is that there's been a redistribution of growth in essence, because a large majority of it has been downtown. Would that be fair?
Through the Speaker, to be very clear, the forecast is for the city as a whole, and then we have density targets in the centers, and it's actually absolutely true that the overall forecast numbers, we've seen a redistribution into the downtown core.
Okay. And then the other thing that I found astounding, to be honest, is that we are approving projects apparently at I'll call it an alarming rate, simply because we seem to be approving projects where we know there's inadequate infrastructure. So my point is, when we look at the provincial targets of 400,000 being made available by 2041, are we talking about 400,000 units being approved as opposed to being built out? Because those are two different things.
Through the Speaker, built out. It's important to note, however, that when we approve units, we have no idea what the timeline will be for when they're built, and there's a whole variety of global factors that affect what really will happen.
But the underlying theme of the growth plan was to actually intensify existing infrastructure. In other words, to build out by making sure that we intensify existing infrastructure. That's not to say that we should then try and move growth to where there isn't existing infrastructure.
Through the Speaker, you're absolutely correct. The growth plan assumes that we are also doing the coordinated infrastructure planning at the same time. My message would be to City Council that on the transit file, with respect to affordable housing, with respect to park space in the downtown, we have significant infrastructure gaps.
Okay, now, assuming that we've got a large number of units approved where there isn't adequate infrastructure, how do we rationalize or accommodate those people to actually build out when the infrastructure is not there? There might be some infrastructure there, but who gets first choice?
Through the Speaker, this is an important question. We're approaching this in different ways in different parts of the city. The TO Core study in the downtown is about exactly answering that question and ensuring that we're not killing the golden goose. At Yonge and Eglinton, we have another process underway. Midtown and Focus was about identifying the park space needs. In the context of the parkland acquisition strategy, there'll be a further look at whether, for example, the city needs to be buying up property in the Yonge and Eglinton area to ensure that there's park space for the residents who we know are coming into that area. The transit network plan is about laying over where the growth is happening, but also where we want to attract growth in the future, where we want to direct growth in the future, because there is existing park space or other existing infrastructure.
Okay. What I'm trying to come to grips with, well, am I finished?
No, you're not, but
I have one more question.
Okay, one more.
What I'm trying to get a handle on is, if there is some existing capacity, let's say, in the downtown to allow someone to build, who will get the existing capacity? We've got a lot of people that have approvals. How do we determine who will go first in line? And then, that's my one question. Or do we have a method? First come, first serve?
Through the Speaker, this is a very important question, and it is currently a first come, first serve approach. When the Mervish-Gary proposal came forward and we asked the question about the water infrastructure, and the response was, well, we can build this project, but it'll probably take up the rest of the capacity in the downtown, and do we want to do that? So this is why we are bringing together these coordinated processes. It's also why Councillor Mamalides' question was so important about directing growth to areas that aren't necessarily attracting it and creating policy mechanisms like the policy plan we're putting in place for Consumers Next, which is all about seeking to attract growth where we do have the transit, where we do have the park space, where we do have the water capacity.
No, that was your last question. That was your... No, there's no comments. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Yeah, he's just learning the rules for the first time.
Yeah, I just want to remind members of council, we have a huge agenda. We want to finish tonight. We can't come back on Friday. Yeah. Councillor Holliday, questions?
Speaker, yes, I just want to be very, very crisp on these items regarding the Committee of Adjustment to the Chief Planner. As Councillor Campbell pointed out, the report, the supplemental report continues to recommend lower fees for the Committee of Adjustment, and I take it that's because of volume. And I understand the recommendation before us from the committee states that we will sustain the older fees, which are higher.
Through the Speaker, to be absolutely clear, this is the old schedule that has come forward because a new schedule hasn't been approved yet. If Council approves the motion from PGM, a new schedule will be prepared.
And the schedule will have higher fees than what's prepared on this supplemental report.
Through the Speaker, that's correct.
Okay, excellent. I want to also understand the committee's recommendation number 2, and I'll read it for everyone's benefit. City Council requests the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning, to ensure that planning staff effort on Committee of Adjustment application reviews match the current fee levels, which we know are higher. In your estimation and your interpretation of this, does that mean that there will be more work effort or less work effort than perhaps there is today?
Through the Speaker, so we currently have a surplus of revenues from the Committee of Adjustment because there's so much volume. My interpretation of that motion is that we are to use that surplus to hire more staff.
Excellent.
To provide a service level that City Council expects.
Okay, now to explore that just a bit more, I understand that planning staff perform a function of supporting the Committee of Adjustment. There's a manager and there's a bunch of planners and other assistants to help the business of the committee to go. I do know that there are other planners that conduct reviews and analysis on Committee of Adjustment applications. Will additional capacity of those people that analyze the applications outside of the committee support structure also benefit from these fees, and we have increased service levels in that?
Through the Speaker, yes, and they must. Excellent. Because that's part of where the backlog is.
Excellent. I also know that the review and analysis and contribution to the city's review of Committee of Adjustment applications go beyond planning sometimes. It goes to engineering.
Councillor Holliday, that was your last question. Yeah.
Can I complete the question?
Yes.
It goes beyond your department to other departments. Will they also benefit, or are these rates still conservative given their work effort?
Through the Speaker, it absolutely will involve the other divisions because, again, the backlog sometimes is because there isn't enough capacity in engineering or in transportation. So that fee will be used for the entire process in order to unlock the backlog and the volume.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
I'll get them. Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to actually ask transportation, if they're there, how many people they have reviewing applications, or maybe if they're not there, they can come into the room, because we're talking about planning applications and how we do things. No, so why don't we go to the next person? They can find somebody.
All right. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just regarding the Committee of Adjustment, been pushing for a long time for improvements to the Committee of Adjustment. You speak about resources, capacity to implement. I don't see this as a resource issue. I see this as it being effective. So I'm just wondering why we haven't seen a lot of those improvements to the public notice area, to the timelines for, this is all about public engagement, which I know you're very committed to, increasing the 10-day period, the actual hearings being people's ability to monitor them by making sure there's audio-visual support. These training of the panel members, which we all know there's an issue there. These have been, this motion I put forward has been in play for many years. This is not about resources. Why hasn't this been implemented, some of these many suggestions we put forward?
Through the Speaker, I would say probably 75% of the recommendations in that motion have in fact been implemented, and we are continuing to implement them, including the monitoring and the audio-visual recording of the meetings that has been implemented. One of the challenges, of course, we've had has been volume, but as of last month, we now have an acting director of the Committee of Adjustment. In fact, that acting director position was brought in place because we'd hit the wall with respect to being able to implement any more of those recommendations without having someone working on it full-time and providing the full-time leadership and system process improvements. We have in fact we've been holding community meetings in order to explain the Committee of Adjustment process. We've created a new brochure, which hopefully all of you have, that explains the Committee of Adjustment process. We've held additional training events over the course of 2016. Yep, that's it. Over the course of 2016 in order to improve the decision-making processes for the Committee of Adjustment. We've added additional panel meetings in both the North and the South in order to address some of the backlog. One of the key objectives of the new C of A director is, in fact, to finish the list that you're holding in your hand that came forward as a result of your motion, to finish that implementation. And I hope that Sarah Rogers, the C of A director, has had an opportunity to meet with you.
She has, and I was pleased to meet with her. So I'd love to go over with you offline about the 75%, because still the North York proceedings are not being audio. There's no audio-visual support of those. So I guess my other question is Young Eglinton, which I represent with another two councillors in this chamber. You know, the growth there is unprecedented. I know you know that. I'm very concerned about what's happening at Young and Eglinton. Shortly, there's going to be a 35-story building built right beside a public school, like literally on the west boundary of a public school. The parents at John Fisher are beyond upset. This kind of intensification, I think, needs to be monitored. Would you consider a moratorium for Young and Eglinton, given the unprecedented level of growth?
Through the Speaker, we currently have a built form planning process underway that's nearing completion. We believe that putting our effort into completing that planning process over the next 6 months would be a much more effective way for Council to establish its will and, in fact, address the growth pressures that we see at Young and Eglinton.
So you mentioned earlier to another one of my colleagues, buying green space, but there literally is not a blade of grass left to buy. The streets of Young and Eglinton are so congested. There's gridlock on streets like Broadway and Erskine. You literally can't navigate those streets anymore. How do we address this unprecedented growth that's quite frankly out of control?
Through the Mayor, through the Speaker, the Midtown in Focus process was about found space and adding POPs, privately owned public spaces, to development parcels. So along Eglinton, we've been able to secure, for example, at the northeast corner, a 10-meter setback to the building to create a green space at the corner. So we've been, in the context of Midtown in Focus, we tinkered at the margins, if you will, to ensure that we were creating pedestrian walkthroughs, setting back buildings to secure more public realm. I do believe that in the context of the parkland acquisition strategy, that there's going to need to be a very bold move. Maybe it won't be like Rail Deck Park, but it's going to have to be a very bold move to find public space at Yonge and Eglinton. In the past, the city literally purchased up homes, and we have many parks in the city that were, in fact, at one point they were homes, and the city purchased a whole series of homes and turned that area into a park. I'm not sure if that's the approach, but there are a whole variety of things that need to be explored in the parkland acquisition strategy.
Thank you. That was your last question. Councillor Fletcher.
I guess I'm back. I don't know if there is anyone from transportation planning, but I'm very interested in how that part of the application process is handled. And the number of people. How many times have we ever questioned the ability of developments to manage the traffic and question the assumptions of the developer's traffic planner, and also looked holistically at a larger neighborhood? So let me just ask this. For a development, you are only able to look at that particular development, not the impact in the surrounding community. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, in the absence of my colleagues from Transportation Services, I'll just say two things. One is that currently 8% of the fee is allocated to Transportation Services. It's my understanding that in the context of the fee review, this was identified as an area where there needs to be more resources, and that there is a broader kind of analysis is in fact required, and you're absolutely right, that has not been the approach that's been taken to date.
So a broader type of analysis is required currently, but we're not doing it. Did I hear you say that?
Through the Speaker, I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues, but I'll say this. When there's a multitude of applications in an area, or of course there's a secondary plan, then an area-wide study is undertaken. But typically in the development review process, we look at that one building and the egress and the access to the site and the parking to the site, as opposed to doing a broader area study.
And how many times does in a development application, do we ever find a problem with the developer's transportation review? Somebody on your staff would know that.
Through the Speaker, it's my understanding that on every application, there's some kind of a pushback, and there is a negotiation that takes place related to some component of the transportation functions, whether it be the parking or the number of bike share units, or the design of the site. On every application, there's always some kind of pushback from staff on trying to seek components of the project from a transportation planning perspective that are in the public interest on that site.
So whether somebody's coming in over the height limit and then the neighbors are saying, how are you going to get that many vehicles out onto this street? And then there's another application down the street. That is, I hear, the holistic way this is supposed to be viewed, but apparently it's not. Oh, there's everybody coming now. Could you hold my time?
Okay, we do have a question for transportation. Okay, Councillor Fletcher?
It actually has to do with the number of staff you have reviewing planning applications.
So through you, Madam Speaker, throughout the entire City of Toronto, approximately 14.
14?
Correct.
And how many are in each, in the Toronto East York?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I would say approximately 6 are in the Toronto East York District.
6? And Madam Chief Planner, how many applications are in Toronto and East York? You have that great slide up there. Percentage of applications. You'll come back to it? Okay, Speaker, if you could, they're looking.
I did put your time on hold.
Oh, it's still on hold. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. They're looking for that answer.
You want to chat amongst ourselves? What do you have, any weekend plans?
I'd just like to know how many transportation.
Yeah, you have any holiday?
I have to buy a turkey. Got any good?
I need to get a
Some of
tree.
those too. Haven't bought any of those. I'm getting a tree, a turkey, some presents, but not today.
Your mic is on, Councillor
I'm
Fletcher.
sorry.
All I heard was turkey.
Just saying I have to still shop for everything.
I thought maybe you were calling somebody a turkey.
No.
Joe, you're on fire today, buddy.
He's on fire.
You are on fire.
Could you do some shopping?
Do we have an answer yet?
Maybe they can just look for it over the lunch hour.
Through the Speaker, the number for 2016 is 413 applications.
Citywide.
13 applications for Toronto and East York. How many for North York? Scarborough and Etobicoke, please. These are outside of Committee of Adjustment.
Right. That's why we're just getting clarity. So the total for South, I stand corrected. For South, the number of projects that are, the number I gave you earlier was a 2016 number. The number of projects in South built, active, and under review is 869. In the East District, it's 395. In the North, 642. And in the West, 456.
And those are actual...
Excluding the Committee of Adjustment.
Okay.
As per your request.
Excluding the Committee of Adjustment. And for that review, we have 14 people, 6 where there's 869 applications. How about in the other zones for those applications? Let's say for North York, which has 642. How many?
I believe the North York District, so you, Madam Speaker, is approximately 3 staff, and then 2 for Etobicoke and 2 for Scarborough District.
So that's 5, 7. That's only 13, if I'm adding that up right.
That was your last question.
Missing somebody.
It would be 4 for North York, my apologies.
4 for...
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. My first question is to the City Solicitor. We heard a few moments ago from the Chief Planner that there will be a report in January addressing some of the workload issues having to do with the number of applications and the number of OMB hearings. Will we be getting information at that time about the impact on the City Legal Department of this development rush we're experiencing?
Yes, Madam Speaker, City Legal will be part of that report.
Thank you very much. To the Chief Planner, thank you very much for all of the details in the presentation that you provided, particularly the work on the development fees and how we're going to be better allocating staff resources to meet those applications. I'm curious, though, about 2 other aspects of the city's work that are neither development review nor OMB hearings. Can you give me a sense of what the relationship between staff workload and secondary planning or avenue studies has been like in this period of development pressure over the last few years? Has it been sharply increasing, is flat, decreasing?
Through the Speaker, I did have those slides in the presentation and took them out as well. There has been an increase in work on secondary plans. There has not been an increase in work on avenue studies. In our metric report that we bring forward on just the work program component, we in fact identified that in 2016, at the beginning of the year, we had 106 studies and our target on our list to complete, and that we had a target of, I believe it was 12 or 17, that we were seeking to complete in 2016. So we recognize that there is a perpetual backlog, so to speak, but we have a prioritization process to ensure that the studies that ought to be completed now as a result of a variety of drivers, a new transit project or significant growth, are being completed first.
Okay, and you know, what one would assume that as the number of applications is increasing, the need for secondary and avenue studies would follow some kind of a ratio. Has there been an increase in staff resources allocated to doing that forward planning ahead of applications?
Through the Speaker, that's correct. The extent to which we have policy in place actually makes the review process go more smoothly, but because we are required by legislation when a development application comes forward to have a final report within 120 days. It makes it very difficult to shift resources in a high-growth context from development review into strategic planning. We have been seeking to do that, and we've done it somewhat on projects like TO Core, but not unilaterally.
Not across the city. The other area where I'm curious about planning staff and resource allocation, in the last few years, maybe it's just me, but it seems like I've seen a lot more from the planning department on high-level citywide stuff, more stuff on transit, more stuff on things like Rail Deck Park. Where are the resources coming from to do that work?
Through the Speaker, the resources have come from a reallocation of the existing positions internally. So
we're finding that we're having trouble providing enough staff to do development reviews, community meetings, as Councillor Carroll has mentioned. We have this large backlog in secondary plan, but we're reallocating from those areas in order to do more citywide planning work?
Through the Speaker, just to be very clear, I misspoke with respect to that answer. It's important to note that it's different in different areas. For example, on the transit planning piece, we actually have money that comes from capital planning. As a result, those positions are temporary. They're not permanent positions because they're not part of our operating budget. With respect to Rail Deck Park, there are a variety of different sources that were identified through the CFO's office for those positions. So those positions as well are not a reallocation, but they are external monies that have been identified.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Through you to the Chief Planner. I just wanted to touch on the area around employment lands. I've noticed that there's a continuum of what I would use the term encroachment, and so we have a number of, particularly in my case in the Ward 37, a number of religious organizations, for example, has gone into employment areas and have started to operate in essence. And when our municipal licensing and standards or building officers go in and shut them down, there's not a process in terms of going to the OMB. I'm just wondering, how does that really benefit us if we have a policy that says we want to protect employment lands for those particular purposes, and yet the OMB can potentially intervene, and in some cases have intervened, which is contrary to our own desires and our policy. So how do we get to control the employment lands when there's another organization that's able to intervene?
Through the Speaker, this is a significant area of concern with respect to provincial policy, and in the context of the OMB reforms that are underway today, through City Council, we've in fact identified this as a concern with the province and have requested that the MCR review, rather than taking place every 5 years, takes place every 10 years, and for there to be a respect for local decision-making in these matters.
Okay. And I can just turn my question to legal, Speaker. I'm just wondering, on site plan as it relates to an application, what are the legal ability for the City of Toronto to ensure that those agreements are in fact in place and adhere to those who are signing those instruments in terms of those agreements for site plan? Because I'm finding that we're having challenges, and I'm told we don't have the legal means to enforce what I would have thought was a legal agreement with respect to a proponent who comes in and agrees to a particular site plan.
Madam Chair, site plan agreements are, under the Planning Act, registrable on title, and City Legal does register the site plan agreements on the title to the property. Under the Planning Act, site plan agreements run with title, and they do bind all subsequent owners, so that there is a continuing legal obligation on the owner of the property to have constructed and maintain the building in substantial compliance with the approved plans and drawings. There is also financial security that is taken primarily with respect to landscaping matters, and we ensure that before the financial security is released, that the landscaping is in fact planted in accordance with the approved plans. So that what we have at the end of the day, Councillor, is both the initial financial security as well as the ability to sue on the contract if the current owner of the property does not substantially maintain the development in accordance with those plans and drawings.
I thank you very much for the answer, Mrs. Solicitor, but I will speak to you offline because I do have some concerns with respect to that.
Thank you.
Following up, I guess, water, I'm just wondering, with respect to stormwater management, I am, who do I ask that question? Lou? Oh, thank you, thank you. Mr. DiGeronimo, I'm just wondering, when an application comes forward and a decision is made that there's a requirement with respect to stormwater pond, stormwater management and so on, at which point is the applicant told that that is a requirement as part of the approval process?
Through you, Madam Speaker, right at the beginning, there are stormwater management design guidelines that are provided to applicants,
yes.
And it's part of it should be part of their initial submission as part of not only the design components of the site plan, but also their engineering functional servicing.
You can see the smile on my face because I'm getting a number of complaints from applicants who are saying that that has not been the case. In fact, it's usually brought to them at what they would consider to be the 11th hour. But, I mean, as part of what you're saying in terms of the protocol, that really should be part of that initial phase of discussion, that should be the case?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the issue that you're referring to has to deal more with groundwater as opposed to stormwater.
Well, I'm just telling you what
different
folks are
issues.
saying. I understand that there are two distinctions.
Yes.
But I'm just telling you what people are saying. They're talking about actually stormwater management, not groundwater.
That was your last question.
Stormwater has always been at the beginning. Groundwater, there's been a recent change where we've been asking applicants to address groundwater issues as well, and we're moving that also to the front. That one was happening a little too late, but the stormwater has always been at the beginning of the application.
Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the growth plan forecast, so your numbers show that we have completed almost 80% of the growth forecast. But our vacancy rate in rentals is at all-time low of 1.3. We don't have, I mean, the market is very robust, so I don't think there's all kinds of empty homes staying in there to be sold. So the homes that we're building are occupied. So is it our forecast that is not well done? What are the other factors that are I mean, there's something here that is not working properly, or I don't understand.
Through the Speaker, there's two things really. One is demographic change and the other is immigration. So you can be building, but if you have more people coming than you're building, you're going to continue to have very low vacancy rates. So we have a significant amount of people who are continuing to come to the city. They're occupying the new units that we're building. We have a significant amount of growth.
So our growth plan is not reflective of the reality that we have in our city. So we can't keep saying that we're well over the numbers, because the reality is that those homes are occupied. So there's something here that we need to review.
Through the Speaker, that's correct. It's important to note that these forecast numbers are the attribution of overall regional growth that Toronto is anticipated or expected to accommodate. What's happening right now is that adjacent municipalities are in fact underachieving their growth targets. So when you look on a regional scale, which is of course the province's prerogative, they're seeing that more of the growth is going into downtown Toronto than was anticipated, and less of the growth is going into other places across the region. That, on a regional scale, that's how it can be understood. On a City of Toronto scale, it creates a crunch for us in terms of ensuring that we have the infrastructure to accommodate all of that growth.
And that's where I want to go next. So at what point do we start reviewing our infrastructure capital plans to reflect this reality? Because I was under the understanding that a lot of our capitals were based on this forecast, and because the forecast is not translating into what we expected, at what point and who is raising the red flag and saying we need to do something in here because we're growing at a lot faster than the growth plan anticipated for?
Through the Speaker, it's important to note that the growth plan forecasts are reviewed every 5 years, and there's a review underway right now, so there actually will be new numbers. A critical question for this City Council to grapple with is how much growth is good growth, and is the city prepared to make the infrastructure investments to accommodate significantly more growth than has been identified in the growth plan. And primarily, it's a question around affordable housing as well as a question around transit, because you simply can't accommodate more growth than you were expecting without building out the infrastructure to ensure that the city remains livable.
So at what point are we going to have staff reporting back to us on how much we need to accelerate our infrastructure if we need to continue this kind of growth?
Through the Speaker, the transit network plan that we brought forward in June was based on the assumption of the growth that we are seeing over the next 15 years. That's the infrastructure that's required from a transit perspective over the next 15 years.
But we have water, sewers,
Correct. So with
hydro. I mean, who's looking at all that?
We are looking at that in great detail in the context of TO Core. So it's specific to the area where we see the greatest growth pressure, which is in the downtown. And TO Core is looking at everything: energy, water, community facilities, so schools and recreation centers, built form, separation between towers, and public realm and park space, as well as surface transit priorities. So we're looking at all of that cohesively.
Just, is it, one last question, is it because of resources that you're not looking at other parts of town that are going through not as much but substantial growth as well?
Through the Speaker, we're looking at the two areas where that need it most, which is TO Core, the downtown, and Yonge and Eglinton. Those are the two areas where we know we have infrastructure deficits.
One last question. When was the last time that we had a process overview on how we deal with the applications coming in? Because one of the things that I keep hearing from developers is, things get lost, we don't know, it takes 6 months to get things done. So when was the last time that we actually did a process review with all the departments involved in the application?
Through the Speaker, we just did that in the context of this review, but we also have a monthly meeting on development review. And in addition, as I outlined in the presentation, we have a process of continuous improvement, so we're always improving it.
That was your last question, sorry, sir. Okay.
Through the Speaker, I would argue that you're seeing the results today. It's precisely the volume of applications that we're processing that is a reflection of the fact that our process improvements over the past 5 years have been successful. A key indicator is that we are approving 20% more than the industry can actually build. So whereas, remember, we have thousands of applications. If 10 developers come up and say a file was lost, I would want to do a deep dive into that file and find out why, but that's not reflected in our overall data.
Thank you. Councillor Mihevik.
Yes, thank you. I'm just, the thing I struggle with sometimes, recognizing that, all this development, it has really, it's a boom for construction workers, for the development community, for lawyers and so on. But I do wonder sometimes, Madam Planner, are we growing, sorry? My question is, zooming right up, are we growing too fast as a city? You were kind of rhetorically answering one of Councillor Bailau's question by asking that, are we growing too fast? So I'm going to pitch it to you. Are we growing too fast?
Through the Speaker, we are, I think, exceptionally blessed with the growth that we see in the city. We do face a tipping point where we need to invest in infrastructure to ensure that we don't compromise future quality of life. So my answer would be the moment that we do not invest in the infrastructure that's required to accommodate the growth, we will be growing too quickly. It's arguable that over the past 30 years, we did not build the transit infrastructure that was required for the scale that the city is today. And that's one of the reasons why the 15-year transit network plan needs to be expedited. The 15-year transit networks plan isn't about long-term growth, it's about growth we've already approved.
Right. So, Vancouver, I think, with its 15% thing, I think it was a BC policy, not a Vancouver policy. They put in a 15% tax, and they must have figured out that this is going to dampen development. And I'm not saying that I would support that. But I do wonder sometimes whether this is happening and it's taking us so quickly that we may down the road say, if we just not push the pause button, but just slowed it down a little bit, A, to do the infrastructure, B, just to absorb the sheer volume of people and learn how to live in more like Manhattan and less like the old Toronto, whether this could be a slower process to do, so I'm just wondering your reflections on that.
Through the Speaker, this too is a really critical question to ask because overall the pressure that we get in this context from the development industry and from councillors is to make the planning process go more quickly. And part of my message to you today is we're actually doing it very quickly already, and we need to think really carefully about whether we're approving enough infrastructure to go alongside of that growth. However, that being said, we do know that if we compare how quickly we're growing and to global global cities, that we in fact go through the process very quickly here, and there could be an argument for taking more time to better link together the infrastructure investments with the planning approvals process so that we don't get out too far ahead. My concern with suggesting that, and this is very much in response to Councillor Bilow's question, we have a tremendous amount of immigration coming to this city. For a variety of reasons, that's only going to continue to increase. We will continue to be a very desirable place to live. If we slow down growth, we will see prices continue to become higher and higher because we have a market-driven economy in this city. So the risk is that if we don't continue to approve and build a significant amount of new housing, you will simply see housing prices continue to really knock out a whole tier from being able to access market housing. And I think that's a very, very serious concern.
Would it also not be the case that we happen to be in North America the flavor of the month? We have more development applications in Toronto than I think the next 3 or 4 cities combined. And it's today, but that could very quickly change in 10 years. Some dips and doodles in the European economy, the Canadian, American economy, and we could lose that moment. That's an argument on the other side, I guess.
Through the Speaker, we're planning for the long term. This is a long-range forecast. We know that cities that build great public infrastructure, which really comes down to 3 things, affordable housing, parks, and transit, those cities have longevity over the long term. They don't actually lose their value. If you look at New York, you look at Paris, you look at London, it's transit, parks, and affordable housing, which all 3 of those cities have ensured are a critical part of their planning framework. I believe that if we focus on those 3 items, that the sky's the limit, that we will continue to grow and we will continue to be a very desirable place to live.
Thank you. That was your last question. Councillor Fragadakis.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. So I just wanted to follow up on what Councillor Mihevik was asking you, through you, Madam Speaker, to the Chief Planner in regards to are we growing too fast? So you said if we're approving 20% more than the industry can build. So my question to you is that not by definition too fast? If they can't build it fast enough, then we're approving too many.
Through the Speaker, one of our objectives, one of our KPIs was in fact to ensure that the planning process is not holding up growth, precisely because we do recognize that continuing to grow is a critical way of adding housing supply. So from our perspective, we actually wanted to be out ahead because we actually think that it puts the ball in the court of private industry. The ball is in their court to actually build. And it insulates us, quite frankly, from some of the complaints about the planning process. Oh, we can't build more because of the planning process. Well, actually, no, we're approving more than you can build. And developers tell me that financing is an issue, access to labor is an issue. So I actually think it's a good practice from a business process to actually we don't want it to be that industry's right up against what we've approved.
Sorry, so you're saying labor is an issue. So what, they don't have enough?
Through the Speaker, that's correct, yeah. The Board of Trade is actually doing
It might be
extensive
because we're
work on
approving
this.
20% more than the industry can build.
Sorry, through the Speaker, the reason they can't build it are things like access to labor. So if there was more access to labor, they could be building more quickly. So the Board of Trade is actually doing a tremendous amount of work on this file to attract people into the skilled labor in order to ensure that we can build the infrastructure that we need in this city. Skilled labor is a critical part of the equation.
Skilled labor to build condos.
To build housing, to build transit, to build parks, everything that we build requires skilled labor. You need electricians and plumbers, everything.
Okay, but you're actually not approving transit, you're actually approving development of the built form, not, you're the planning department. We have another department, it's called Transportation Services.
Through the
And we
Speaker,
have the
we've brought forward a
TTC.
transit network plan. Transportation planning has advanced Smart Track and RER and those other projects, and one of the big concerns the Board of Trade has with building those projects is access to labor.
Okay.
Councillor Shiner to speak.
Madam Speaker, and to all of my colleagues, I really do appreciate you're taking the time to hear from the Chief Planner and all the questions that you have. I think I have to move a motion first.
Yes, please.
It's just to bring one small amended report over here because the staff report is there, so I'll move the amendment that's up on the screen. I thought it was important for you to have some of the debate that we're having at committee and put these three items, how does the city go, development application review fee, Councillor, if I could for a minute, and city planning performance metrics all together. On November 8th, we dealt with the Places to Grow Act, and same issues. And we said then, wait, we've met. We're exceeding the provincial targets. We've done everything that the province has asked us to do, and yet you continue to allow the Ontario Municipal Board to hear appeals on not just our zoning, but our unofficial plan, which is the guiding document of the city that permits all this growth and more. And we said in the report that's there, I have a copy of it, you got to stop that. Because the city is not able to control the development, and that's happening to my colleagues in the downtown core, it's happening at Yonge and Eglinton, it's happening on North Yonge Street, and it happens in pockets of wards throughout the city. Planning to me, though, is somewhat like, well, it's a relay race. We have 16 divisions, and they're all trying to get to the finish line together and keep handing off the baton to get over it. And we were doing pretty good until 2006, when the Places to Grow Act came in. But now, we're not up in the front, we're not in the middle of the pack, we're trying to stay up with the development industry that's getting way out in front of us, and you can see it. Lack of transit, lack of parks, our sewer system, our water system, our community services, they're all, hydro in areas, they're all under extreme pressure. We're not out in front. And that's the issue that we've been trying to deal with. And when I hear 17 months on average, it may sound, oh, you'll have an average, but it's a poor average. Because the province allows an appeal in 6 months. So what's happening is, those poorer applications are coming to us, we're behind, after 6 months they appeal, and we can't control them. Because the Ontario Municipal Board is often approving them. And then the fee structure came to us, which was in front of you. And I was so surprised to hear in the fee structure, well, this is the fee for the service that you're giving. And we asked about Committee of Adjustment. It's taking so long. Well, yeah, we're reducing the fee because it's taking so long because we don't have enough people there. And I didn't really know what to do on the morning of the meeting when we went in there because I'm not a person that likes to raise fees. But I came out of the meeting with motions to say we will support the fee increase and we will support bringing staff on to make the process better because we have great staff in the city in all the divisions that are working so hard to try and keep up with all the applications that are going through. And if we need more staff, let's get them. But then we ask for the performance metrics as the second part of this so we can be sure that we're measuring a way to see that we're giving better service for a higher fee. Because I'm a believer that people will pay for more money for better service and not get stuck in the process. And the initiatives that are there, like the SWAT team, these initiatives or mediation, or the other ones that are there, they're not driven by one division. They're not driven by planning alone. I believe that the SWAT team came up in a roundtable that was had, and someone had an idea, and the solicitor thought it was great. I know I've talked with him about initiatives like that, and I know the divisions have. The mediation was out through many divisions. And it takes that coordination of all 16 divisions to be there and here. The chief planner, I believe, speaks on them all, which is what you should understand where they're there today. So we have to do better. We have to stop people skipping the queue. We have to make sure the province hears that we're meeting and exceeding our targets and respect us for that. We have to find ways to review the applications in a better manner. We have to coordinate. We have to coordinate our staff better so they can deal with the responses, and we have to be able to measure that, because the process does need to be changed. Because I have been inundated from the time I took the responsibility from you to be chair of the committee, from residents, from industry, and from you as colleagues, about the problems that you're having with the review process and the complaints that we're all receiving. And we do a great job. We do a great job of processing applications. Our staff, as I said, work really hard to get them through. But this, I have 2 minutes more as chair.
Yes.
I'm
Just-
watching it.
I know, but we have to vote on it. All in favor? We have to vote on the
Oh,
extension. Yeah. All in favor, carried.
Right, whatever. So I must tell you, the Planning and Growth Committee is seized of this. We have some new members coming on, like Councillor Perks, who's been very involved. Your comments are much appreciated. We need to continue with that input. We need to see ways to make changes, because we have great people doing great jobs building a wonderful city with great amenities through all 16 divisions. But we're under severe pressure to keep that up. So we are looking at, and the questions were there, increasing the fees. We're looking at increasing the budgets, but we want to be able to see that we can recover those fees from the improved service, so we're giving value for money. And any comments that you have, they're much appreciated. And the debate here today, well, I'm sure will be interesting, and the questions you have, I very much appreciate you being so involved in this process.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just very quickly, I only rise to recommend that people take a look at a report attached to this report from QP 79 called Arrested Development. And you should look at it whether you like that TV show or not. Often we say, here's another letter from QP. And as I said in my questions to the Chief Planner, whether you think they should be in or out of the union is immaterial to me. If you have had a complex application in your ward, and you felt that to get the residents through it, what they needed was a series of meetings called a working group, and you are then told, I've hit my quota, I can't fit any more evening meetings in, you want to read this report. Because very soon, coming in January, in time for the budget process, is a way to address not only some of their issues, but some of those issues of making sure that there are enough staff to process the more complex applications. And so you owe it to yourself to look at those survey findings. Some of it, you can filter. We're all grown-ups here. You can filter some of it that may seem to be agenda-driven. But it's important to have that perspective as we figure out how we're going to deal with the workload issues, so that we can begin to help our community planners balance out those that we can leave to them and those that we can't. Those that need a working group and those that are simply eating up a lot of the community planners' time, because unbeknownst to our residents, after the controversial moment when they see a final report in community council, it's all of that afterward stuff, the plan of subdivision, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that starts to eat up a lot of time. And then when you need them to come and meet with your community, you're not there. So it's an important document to read that maybe hasn't had your eyes on it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi to speak.
I'm going to come from a bit of a different perspective. I've never seen so many reports in front of council over the last couple of months that increases taxes, fees ahead of the budget. I've never seen this before. This is yet another report that says we need to increase fees before we deal with the budget. And wasn't it supposed to be the budget that actually deals with new fees, new taxes, how we spend our money, how many staff we have? But instead we've had a whole slew of reports that say we need more staff here and we need more staff there and we need to increase taxes and fees. That to me, I've never seen in this place ever before. It's always been at budget time. So I think there's a bit of an agenda going on, and I guess somebody needs to say it. This report only, and in fairness to the head planner, this is not, the statistics that come out of this report I don't see it as a negative to the planning division at all. They only prove what I've been saying all along, and that is there is a huge disconnect between what I call the former city of Toronto and the rest of the suburbs. And the statistics are only showing it, and we could shake our heads, and you know what I can't believe is the councillors that represent the suburbs who are seeing a clear difference on how their communities are looking after you cross a particular road in this city, from cleanliness to filthiness, from weeds from no weeds to weeds, from bus shelters that have been cleaned the day before to bus shelters that haven't been cleaned for 3 or 4 months. And the same councillors are going to vote in favor of these reports continually. And what it really means at the end of the day is that the more you concentrate, and we heard it earlier with the language that was being said, the more we all agree that everything needs to be concentrated in the downtown part of the city, the more the resources that we have and every dollar we spend is going to go towards the downtown part of the city. And there will be excuses, continual excuses as they are today, and those of us from the suburbs understand it. We're always being told no. We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, and the policies, which is the biggest one now, the policies don't allow staff to do the work that's necessary in the suburbs. So when I think it was the chair of Works that made the comment about a moratorium, I think I would support that if someone were to move it, because that's what's needed. And it's needed for a lot of reasons. We've got to catch up with everything that we're doing so there's some fairness to the rest of the city. Right? And so if you did that, then maybe, just maybe, some of the people that have the money wouldn't mind bringing it up to a few wards that might need some extra flow of money and some extra density to be able to make it work and qualify for the transfer payments that we don't qualify if we don't have the density for. That's really what all this is about. You know, and staff, like I see staff laughing and stuff. You're like, it's not funny. Like, it's not funny. These things are not funny. They're serious. Speaker, I've heard you talk about your community. That's not going to change with these reports. It's going to get worse, Madam Speaker. Look, you know, some of us have tried dearly to put reports on this agenda. I've got one right now for a revenue and a study on Wilson Avenue to be conducted, because we know what's going to happen there after the hospital. Councillor Al-Jamari is interested as well. You know what happens every time some of us want to do the things that are happening downtown, the same sorts of things, getting approvals in here with studies to do it the right way. We all want to do it. You know what happens? A councillor from the downtown part of the city always holds it and finds an excuse not to do it. We don't have the money. Councillor Perks held mine today. There's logic. There's reason for him to do it. Why does he want a ward like mine, a ward like Councillor Jamari's, a ward like Councillor DeChano's or Councillor Thompson or Councillor Karygiannis's? Why would you want density there over the next 10 or 15 years and qualify for much of the resources that comes with that, Why would anybody want that in the downtown core? You know why? Because they get all the funding. I wish this report had one thing. For every dollar that's spent, I would have loved to know how much of that, in taxes we collect, goes to the downtown part of the city versus the suburbs.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Always tough to follow. Through you, Madam Speaker, I would just say, and maybe this, I'm putting my parochial hat on, I'll have to disagree with the previous councillor where I would say we don't want what's happening downtown. So maybe I'm being honest about that, but what we're feeling on Bathurst and Dufferin is so much development at a rate which is so rapid that my residents are overwhelmed. And part of that is, while we say it's transit-oriented development, I can't point to the transit project that's coming that will support that development, because it's not. While I hope we get better headway times on the Dufferin bus one day, it's going to be the Dufferin bus for the next 30 or 40 years, yet we're getting 35-story after 35-story after 35-story application come in, and that's after we've done a secondary plan and an avenue study. And so I would think that if you were to talk to most residents in these parts of the city, whether suburban or downtown, these communities are feeling overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed, and that they don't feel that they've got a advocate as a city in something that's helping them manage all this growth. Yeah, they should talk to the chair. That's what I tell them to do.
The chair itself.
So one thing that's become clear to me, and I think the chief planner even acknowledged this, was there is a serious disconnect between what we approve and what transit is either in the ground or planned for certain parts of the city. And there needs to be a more formal link made there, so that is one of the key requirements of approvals of certain densities in neighborhoods. We understand that you can have height and have density and have lots of new units if there's transit there to support it. I've actually got residents, if you can imagine this, in car-focused Dufferin and Lawrence, who are now saying, if you approve that development, that 35-story development, can you please allow no parking at all? Which is like such a sea change, because planners and planning experts keep telling them everyone's going to walk a kilometer to the subway. Don't worry about it. But they know that's not the reality, and so they're feeling overwhelmed and wanting to see those changes. I have to comment on the process itself. The kind of 1950s style planning meeting has to change. People are angry within moments and minutes of it beginning because they don't feel that it's productive at all. They feel that us as the city and the planner, who are talented people, all of a sudden are put in the position of being the advocate for the developer. They're not seen as the independent arbiter of this application. And so in my ward, and in some cases it might be because bigger developments are new to these communities, where in other communities they might be more development savvy and can handle it. That process is completely flawed. We put our planners in a terrible position, we put our communities in an adversarial position, and you don't get any good conversation or constructive changes to applications that come of it. So that has to be totally overhauled, and I hope that some of the things that the chief planner has suggested they're doing in other parts of the city start to migrate up north and across the city, because it's just not working. Just a last couple points, because I know time is of the essence, Madam Speaker. We also, one trend that is very troubling that I know we're starting to turn our eyes to, and Councillor Shiner, as the chair of the committee, has started to, is the scourge of stacked townhouses across neighborhoods in our city. And they're being built because they're cheap to build and they sell quickly. They're not being built because they meet any design standards or are attractive or meet any other policy goals. And that's something that we have to address and be more aggressive of. And sadly, where a lot of times where they're going is in all the school sites that are sold. You talk about green space and the need for green space, where this green space is now lost forever because the school site's sold and a developer squeezes as many into there as possible. So I'd just like to say that I think Councillor Mihevc asked the question, is it too much? I think it clearly is, and our residents are telling us that. I think that we have to get a handle on it. I think this is the most important issue we deal with, and certainly the one that I hear from the most from my residents, and I think councillors around me would say the same thing. But I do think ultimately we have to totally reform the process by which we connect and solicit input from our communities. And the more important piece is we have to bridge that gap and make that link between transit actually being there planned and our granting approval for applications and processes, because right now that is a broken link that has to be fixed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, members, before we break for lunch, do we have any quick releases? Yes. Okay, if you can put your name up, request to question staff. Councillor Perks?
1 second, 1 second.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
On page 4.
Sorry. Councillor Kelly, please, I can't hear. Okay, on page 4?
Page 4, LS 15.4, update on liquor licensing issues.
The release?
Yes.
Okay, on page 4, LS 15.4, Councillor Perks is releasing. All in favor? Recorded vote. Yes, we're doing quick releases.
Councillor Fletcher, please, and Councillor Mihevc, please.
The item carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, the motion that I moved on, the item we were dealing with, was with the assistance of staff drafting it, was to permit the development application review fee additional report to go forward, but it failed, unfortunately, to support the committee recommendations to retain the current minor variance fee and not drop it. So I just wanted to place the amended report.
So you're revising the motion?
The revised motion.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Speaker. I have 3 to release.
Okay.
Page 3, Executive Committee 20.12, George Street Revitalization Recommendations for Short-Term Non-Competitive Contracts. And I'll release that, and I've had my questions answered, and we'll hear more about moving all these people into 15 shelters as the new year comes across. So,
Okay, on page 3, EX 20.12, Councillor Fletcher is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Okay.
Page 4, Licensing and Standards, LS 15.2, and actually Councillor Palacio, the chair, has an amendment, and with that amendment, I'd release that, Speaker. Okay, I'll keep holding that.
Okay, then can you speak to the chair, and then this way we can get it released shortly, if you have any issues with it? Okay, thank you.
And then the
Councillor
next-
Fletcher, do you
Yes,
have?
I have another one, and it's Toronto and East York.
What page?
It's page 7, Madam Speaker. 20.16, Request for Direction Report, 169, 175 Jones, and 35 Peyton Lane, and I'll ask those questions offline.
Okay. On page 70, 20.16, Councillor Fletcher is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Is that it? Councillor Fletcher?
No, I did. Those were my 3.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Not releasing that tree, just.
Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong?
Yes, thank you. I'll release MM 23.3. Oh, it's the Nanjing.
On page 8. Point of order? Councillor Kirk.
Madam Chair, there's been some discussion. The motion has been revised. If I can have staff put it up, just so people understand what we're voting on, if we have a vote.
Okay, if we can put the motion on the screen. So this is on page 8, members' motion 23.3. There is the amendment on the screen. All in favor? Carried. Item as amended? Item as amended, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Sorry, on page 4, HL 16.1, Progress in Implementing the Intimate Partner Violence Action Plan. I do have a motion that was sent to the clerk desk. Yeah, okay.
Does the clerk have it?
I did originally ask for advanced circulation, but I don't believe it has made the rounds because I don't see it on my own desk. Yeah, I'm sorry that it's so long, but it's actually fairly straightforward. I'll just take a minute to explain it. This report is the second installment.
Okay, members, so we know what we're voting on. Councillor Wong Tam is on page 4, HL 16.1. It's here without a recommendation. She has her motion on the screen.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'll just take a minute to explain it if you'd like. This report is a very report coming from the Toronto Public Health. It's the second installment, almost as an interim report, and it's actually an ongoing body of work led by Public Health, and it's basically the City of Toronto's strategy to address intimate partner violence, and it is our own action plan. I think it's a great report. There's a lot in there, especially as an interim report, but I think that we could probably do a little bit more with respect to coordinating with the other bodies of government that are already doing some work on this matter, and also to ensure that we are going to have fuller ongoing partnerships with the Indigenous community that is that was specifically named in the report, and to ensure that we can action out as much as possible. This is a pressing issue. Madam Speaker, if you recall, we had the death of Toronto Public Health nurse Zara Abdil. That happened on December 3rd, 2014. It was a very emotional time for the corporation, for our family here at Toronto Public Service, and I think that members of council should know that this work is largely inspired by that particular murder of Zara and her 2 children, and I want to thank Toronto Public Health and all the city divisions for continuing to work on this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the motion on the screen. On favor? Carried. Councillor Mamalidi.
Page 7, TE 2018. Madam Speaker, if I could just take everything I said in my last speech and put it into this one, then I've said all I have to around that.
All right. So on page 7, T 20.18, Councillor Mamalidi is releasing. On favor?
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote. Can I have a motion that we can finish the quick items? On favor? Carried. Okay, Councillor Mamalidi, your recorded vote.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Layton, please.
Councillor Fragadakis, please. Councillor Cole, please. Councillor Fletcher, please.
Mayor Tory, your vote, please.
The item carries 33 to 2.
Councillor Mamalidi?
Same page, 7, TE 20.42. My questions have been answered on this. Thank you.
Okay, on page 7, T 20.42, Councillor Mamalidi is releasing. On favor? Carried. Are there any more? No? Okay, recess to 2 o'clock.